Hi, my name's Drew Pearce, and this is Notes on a Scene from Hotel Artemis.
Screen.
So the scene we're going to be watching today is essentially the introduction to the hotel itself, this secret hospital for criminals in 2028.
Hello. How can I help? How many? Yeah, I got 2 rooms left.
Cool, let's go to that wide shot, if I may. This was supposed to be the frame that I introduced Jodie in. The camera panned down beautifully to find her on the bed, but in the end that didn't give me the resonance and the ability to really let the audience sink into the look that Jodie has. So Chung-Hoon Chung, the cinematographer, had a camera here that I was really just getting for a coverage close-up. But because we sat on it for the whole shot, we ended up having this beautiful introductory image that I would never have thought of. I wanted it to feel like this was just another Wednesday in the nurse's life. And this establishes the routine of her day when a criminal is coming in. Everything needs to feel like she's been doing it for 25 years. That's how you bed in the story and make it feel real.
Just another Wednesday. Mute.
So the scene we're watching is really the first scene after the cold open of the movie. One of the ways I wanted to do it was set it to a piece of music. There's also a thematic thing. The nurse has a tragedy in her background, and the music of her youth is one of the ways that she blocks that tragedy out. I tried maybe 800 tracks for this section, but in the end, California Dreaming actually sums up a lot of the themes and the kind of vibe of the movie. What's kind of befitting for a movie that, you know, references the 1920s and the 2020s is that we actually used all of the old Hollywood techniques that we could to make the space seem bigger. And we built it on a budget. So frankly, though you're looking at what should be the entire penthouse floor of a hotel, we have this corridor, and then a tiny corridor over there, one room over there, one room here, and that's our entire set. You have to work out what will make the audience feel claustrophobic, but also what will make them not think they're watching a small movie that's been jammed into a space. One of the tricky things when you're making a movie on a budget like this is you actually can't have a ceiling. One of the things you end up using your precious VFX money doing is just filling in black gaps the whole way down a corridor. And even when you get to the end, I remember we were watching the very final playback with Chung-Hoon, the cinematographer. He said, "Stop!" And he pointed up, and there was literally just one tiny light, like here, that you could see through. And if you look through the movie, there are maybe 2 shots that I couldn't afford. But I tried to make them as dark as possible. Hit me up on Instagram, and I'll give you a prize if you see them. So you won't be able to see it here, and maybe you will in the next shot, but these water bottles, which, you know, are the complimentary water bottles of Hotel Artemis, are actually a brand called Mulray, who was in Chinatown, the Mulholland analog, the guy who brought water to Los Angeles. And I love the idea that somehow we might exist in the same universe as Chinatown. The challenge of making this movie on a tiny budget is really apparent in this shot. So we had to redress the 2 bedrooms that we had 4 times in order to pretend that we had all of these different rooms. But when it came to Niece's room, which we only shot for half a day in, I literally couldn't afford to redress the room past this curtain or this trellis. Everything behind here is just a different room from a different day. This is as wide a frame as I could even hit. And part of the reason for that is I had this amazing production design team led by Ramsey Avery. And one of the things we really cared about is how much you break down the walls, is how much you make it feel lived in. Korean movies of the last 10 years are probably the biggest aesthetic influence on me. One of the great things about how Korean cinema uses light, it's very practical sources. You'll see there's lots of golds. Gold ended up being a color that represented the safety of the hospital for the beginning half of the movie, and then in the second half it represents the riot coming in and destroying the hospital. I love the idea that you can be looking at one side of the room and seeing these beautiful busted Art Deco murals, and then switch around and you get this kind of brutal field medical 2028 tech that looks like it's been through the mill and has had blood on the walls. All the tech in the movie, however far-fetched it looks, is actually fully researched by a team of futurists. So what I do with my futurist group is I would ask them, how will we fix bones in 10 years' time? How will we print livers, which is what's happening just here? As ever, detail upon detail, the brand of the 3D printer is Marlowe, in a reference to Chandler's crime icon. Similarly, the screen itself is Danko made, which is a reference to the Russian character in Walter Hill's Red Heat. Walter Hill was a massive influence on the movie, and so I tried to jam it with Uncle Walt, alternative Uncle Walt references wherever I could. One of the things that's incredible about this sequence is that only half of it is Jodie Foster herself. Because Jodie has a body double that she's had since she was 17, who has grown with her through the last 40 years. Her name is Jill. She's an amazing actress, and she physically has even changed and grown and aged the same way that Jodie has. So, for example, this isn't Jodie Foster. This is Jill. She walks into the frame. To be honest, we even catch the side of her face, and it's absolutely perfectly Jodie. See, the mannerisms are exactly the same, the way she holds her shoulders. Even that section as we walk off, you would never guess. The brilliant thing about VFX these days is we had an incredible team, Cantina Creative, but some of the problem solving came from the 22-year-old called Chris, who was interning in our office, who, with After Effects, could do things on screen that 20 years ago you wouldn't even get in a blockbuster. And a lot of these shots, like the comps of Jodie walking in front of doors, the key moving forward is always get yourself an intern called Chris, who knows everything about digital effects, even though it's his first job. This shot is crucial to the movie in a whole bunch of different ways. On one level, it's aesthetic. It's, again, the juxtaposition between the futurism of these military-style gates that have been jerry-rigged into this busted 1920s hotel that's falling apart at the seams. And I really wanted that sense that time hadn't necessarily been taken to jam this stuff into the walls. But the shot's also important because the movie overall, though it's about an entire universe, is really just seen through the keyhole of one small personal story. And that story is the nurse, Jodie Foster's character, who created this hospital because of a tragedy in her past that she somehow, we realize, feels like she's atoning for. And there's a motif in the movie of cages that runs through that. And, this is an interesting shot because on one level, this is Jodie protected from the outside world by this cage, because coming through these doors are about to be the criminals that she will end up looking after for the evening. But compositionally, I like the idea that she's always trapped in cages the whole way through. And actually, you'll see through the movie, there are lattices in every room, and I shoot through them as much as possible to always give a sense that all the characters in this film have kind of been drawn together because they're trapped in their own emotional cages. It's the kind of stuff that when I was a teenager, I maybe didn't notice on the first watch, but it's the kind of thing that made things my favorite movie. I've worked on big movies, and you try and make them great, but the thing they have to be on every level is okay for everyone. With Hotel Artemis, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make one person's favorite movie, and that's what I hope we've done.
Showtime.